Something else had happened on Adebayo's return to the palace, something more puzzling than he had words for. On the first night, as he paced the hallways wishing for Kwame's presence, a confused little girl had appeared out of nowhere, walked up to him, clung to his legs, and called him Papa with innocent adoration. Adibayo's eyes had widened in surprise, his heart softening despite the confusion. The palace physician appeared soon after, apologizing profusely, and explained that the girl was sick and had sleepwalked from her bed. Kwame entered his uncle's study, the weight of the past and present heavy on his shoulders. Though he was once his uncle's favorite, months of distance and defiance had likely changed that. The man who once nurtured his talent, who called him genius and made him treasurer at 16, now felt like a stranger, a powerful, judgmental stranger. But Kwame had no choice. He had to confront this man. His uncle, King Kofi, didn't look up when Kwame entered. The old man's presence filled the room, unsmiling, tense, and intimidating. He continued writing, a calculated move to let Kwame stew in discomfort. This tactic was familiar, a method to break him down before any words were exchanged. But Kwame wasn't a boy anymore, and he wasn't here to beg. "Uncle, we need to talk," Kwame began, his voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at him. King Kofi finally put down his pen, folding his hands in front of him, and leveled a cold gaze at Kwame. "You dare show your face after everything?" His tone was icy, each word cutting like a blade. "As if you haven't disgraced this family enough. What are you doing here, Kwame? Have you come to your senses? I will not forgive you, even if you begged. You are filthy, dirty, disgusting. Look at you, no shame at all. I had so much hope for you, and you let that sick man—" "Stop!" Kwame's voice was firm, surprising even himself. He didn't know where the confidence came from. Maybe it came from hearing about Adebayo's brave stance. His uncle's tirade trailed off as Kwame's demeanor shifted. "That man is my husband, whether you like it or not. I won't stand here and let you insult him. This isn't a phase. It's not something that will go away. You need to find a way to deal with it." Kwame could feel rage boiling within him, anger he hadn't realized he was capable of until his uncle's cruel words about Adibayo ignited it, and also finding out from Lumusi just now that his uncle was behind everything. Initially, he had hoped for a peaceful conversation, to appeal to the man who once cared for him, but that hope was dashed. If his uncle was willing to go this far, Kwame decided he wasn't here to seek approval or forgiveness. He was here to protect the man he loved, even if it was from his own family. "And I didn't come here to beg for anything," Kwame continued, his voice unwavering. "I'm here to tell you to call off the witch hunt against my husband. I know you're behind the idea to cut him off from the union. You're trying to punish me through him. I'm warning you, uncle. Call it off." King Kofi was momentarily taken aback by Kwame's boldness, his nephew's defiance so out of character that it left him momentarily speechless. "Or you'll do what, Kwame?" he asked, his voice a dangerous whisper. Kwame moved closer, planting his hands on the desk, leaning in until he was eye to eye with the man who once held his respect. He could not believe he once feared this man and would have done anything for him, trusting that they were family and had each other's backs. "I was your treasurer, uncle. We worked closely for years. I know things you don't want anyone else to ever know. So call off the witch hunt." Shock flickered across the king's face, mingling with a hint of amusement. "Did you just threaten me, Kwame? Your king? Your uncle? Me?" His voice carried a mix of disbelief and dark humor. "You know I could have you removed right here and now." Kwame didn't flinch. I know you could, but my husband would stop at nothing to avenge me. You may have more money and influence, but Adibayo is relentless when it comes to me. You saw that today, didn't you?" A long silence hung between them, thick with unspoken words and shifting power dynamics. Kwame straightened, a newfound confidence radiating from him. "I need to get back to my husband," he said, turning to leave. "Make sure that the union keeps doing business with us, and I will keep my mouth shut." King Kofi remained seated after Kwame left, stunned and furious. No one had ever spoken to him like that, least of all his once obedient nephew. Yet as anger surged within him, so too did a sliver of fear. There was something different about Kwame, a strength he hadn't seen before. And the knowledge Kwame held, that was dangerous. As Kwame walked out, a mix of adrenaline and relief surged through him. He had stood his ground, though the consequences of his defiance loomed large, and he wasn't sure if his uncle would actually back down from the threat. Still, he had done what he needed to do, for Adibayo and for himself. It wasn't certain, but it felt as though Adebayo's boldness was rubbing off on him. Through their marriage and intimate bond, he felt himself slowly becoming more like his husband. Kwame chuckled at the thought. Meanwhile, W stalked through the palace courtyard, his anger simmering just below the surface. Thoughts of the arrogant prince's insult swirled in his mind, and his fists clenched tightly as he replayed every sneer and condescending word. Though Kwame had told him to stay with Lumusi, W couldn't sit still. He needed to walk off the rage bubbling inside him. He wandered aimlessly through various parts of the palace, kicking at the grass and anything else he could find. Turning a corner, W was startled to unexpectedly see the prince. He quickly hid behind a pillar and watched as the prince berated a maid. The prince stood tall, his voice dripping with contempt as the elderly woman knelt before him, tears streaming down her face. The prince's harsh words, "Idiot," "stupid," were followed by a slap that sent the woman sprawling to the grass, and a brutal kick for the simple mistake of dropping a glass of water. Seeing this, something inside W snapped. He was transported back to his own childhood, witnessing his mother's suffering at the hands of his father, powerless to help. But not now. Now he had power, even if it was only the power of his rage. Without thinking, W launched himself at the prince with a feral snarl, driven purely by instinct. The impact drove both of them to the ground, and W's fists flew, landing blows to the prince's face, chest, and arms. The prince, shocked, struggled beneath him, crying out and trying to fend off the wild attack. Their breathing grew heavy as they fought and tussled. The guards, noticing their prince under attack, quickly intervened, prying W off and restraining him. W thrashed in their grip, desperate to continue the fight. The prince staggered to his feet, his face marred with cuts and a trickle of blood running from his cheek. His eyes blazed with fury as he approached W. As he stood before W, both of them breathing heavily and their eyes locked in a fierce battle, a strange and unexpected thought crossed the prince's mind. W was disturbingly beautiful in his ferocity, a raw, untamed allure that was both unsettling and compelling. The prince quickly shook off the thought, bewildered by his own reaction in the midst of such a tense moment. He blinked away the unsettling image, his face hardening with resolve as he focused on the task at hand. "Your life is over," he hissed at W, wiping the blood from his face. "How dare you touch me?" W glared back, defiant. Before he could think better of it, he spat in the prince's face. The hate he felt for the prince was like a living, breathing entity inside his chest, beyond the reach of words. The guards tightened their hold on W, but this only fueled his anger further. The prince's face twisted in rage as he signaled to the guards. "Hold him," he commanded, stepping forward and driving his fist into W's stomach. W doubled over, gasping, but he refused to give the prince the satisfaction of seeing his pain. He straightened, his gaze unwavering. Seeing this, the prince's frustration grew. Why couldn't the boy just surrender? Why was he so defiant? No one ever defies me. Everyone does as I say. And why did the boy have to be so good-looking? Nope, I didn't just think of another boy as attractive. A street rat more to that, God forbid. The prince clenched his fist, preparing to deliver another punch to W's stomach, hoping it would drive away the unwelcome thoughts. But a commanding voice cut through the tension. Enough! Kwame's voice was cold and commanding. He stepped between the prince and W, his posture rigid with fury. Let him go. The prince scoffed, glaring at Kwame. This vermin attacked me. He deserves to be punished. Let him go. Kwame's tone was deadly. His eyes locked onto his cousin's with a fire that made the prince's blood run cold. For a moment, the prince felt a chill run down his spine. Kwame had never used this tone with him before. The prince sneered, trying to assert his dominance. You can't protect him. Who is he to you, anyway? Kwame didn't flinch. In a move that surprised everyone, including himself, he declared, He's my son. The courtyard fell silent. The prince blinked, taken aback, while W stared at Kwame in shock. The prince's face twisted with disbelief. Your son? He stammered. You don't have a kid. I do now. I have two, actually. Kwame said firmly, stepping closer to W, his gaze daring the prince to challenge him. And if you want to hurt him, you'll have to go through me. The prince's fury wavered, uncertainty creeping in. He could see the steel in Kwame's eyes, and for the first time, he backed down. He spat on the ground at their feet, his voice dripping with venom. This isn't over. Kwame didn't respond, his attention solely on W. He pulled W away from the guards, his grip gentle but firm. Come on, he said quietly, guiding W away from the scene. Kwame dragged W to the carriage, his mind racing with a mix of anger and worry. He was ready to scold the boy for his reckless actions, for daring to fight a prince. Did W not realize the consequences of such behavior? He was ready to give W a piece of his mind, but as soon as they were inside the carriage, the words died in his throat. W wasn't the defiant, proud boy Kwame had come to know. He was curled up on the seat, arms wrapped around himself as if trying to hold together the pieces of something shattered inside him. He looked so small, so fragile all of a sudden, like an injured kitten lost in a world too harsh for him. His usual bravado had crumbled, leaving behind a boy who was hurt, broken, and desperately alone, needing someone to care, someone to hold him together. I'm sorry, W whispered before Kwame could speak. His voice was trembling, and his eyes were distant, as if he was seeing something far beyond the confines of the carriage. I didn't mean to cause trouble, but he was being mean to that lady and to you. His words came out in sobs, each one pulling at Kwame's heart. My mom, she got very sick in the end. My dad, he did horrible things to her, and she got sick. Tears streamed down his face, raw and unrestrained. I just wanted to help that lady. I didn't want her to get hurt like my mom. Kwame felt something inside him break at W's confession. His anger from earlier was completely gone. The boy was so lost, so full of pain that no one his age should carry. Without thinking, Kwame pulled him into a tight embrace, wrapping his arms around the trembling boy as if he could shield him from all the pain in the world. It's okay, Kwame whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Everything's going to be okay. He held W close, feeling the boy's sobs shake his small frame, and wished with all his heart that he could take away his suffering. There was so much more to this boy than the defiance and pride he wore like armor. Kwame wanted to know his story, to heal the wounds that life had inflicted on him. "What you said in there, did you mean it?" W's voice was small, vulnerable, as he clung to Kwame like a lifeline. "You called me your son. Did you mean it?" Kwame hesitated. The words had slipped out in the heat of the moment, a protective instinct he hadn't even realized he had. But looking down at W now, so desperately needing that reassurance, Kwame knew he couldn't take it back. He gently rubbed W's back, his heart heavy with a mix of uncertainty and an unexpected sense of responsibility. "Let's not think about that now, okay?" W nodded, his body still trembling as he buried his face into Kwame's chest. It wasn't long before exhaustion took over, and W fell asleep in Kwame's arms, his breathing evening out, but the weight of his pain still lingered in the air. Kwame held him close, his heart aching for the boy who had seen too much, lost too much. In that moment, Kwame silently vowed to be there for him, to protect him from a world that had already taken so much from him. Back in King Adebayo's kingdom, he was furious when he returned to find Kwame gone. Anxiety gripped him as he paced the grand hallways like a storm, his mind plagued with worst-case scenarios. Though he had found a note from Kwame upon his arrival, reassuring him that he'd only be gone for a few days, Adibayo couldn't shake his worry. The note, a small gesture that spoke volumes about Kwame's considerate nature and affection, brought a fleeting smile to his face, but it wasn't enough to calm his nerves. He had returned with such eagerness to share everything that had happened at the union, especially because he knew he had kept Kwame in the dark. The pang of longing to apologize for keeping things from Kwame gnawed at him, for their bond was such that he felt incomplete without sharing everything with Kwame. Something else had happened on Adebayo's return to the palace, something more puzzling than he had words for. On the first night, as he paced the hallways wishing for Kwame's presence, a confused little girl had appeared out of nowhere, walked up to him, clung to his legs, and called him Papa with innocent adoration. Adebayo's eyes had widened in surprise, his heart softening despite the confusion. The palace physician appeared soon after, apologizing profusely, and explained that the girl was sick and had sleepwalked from her bed. He informed the king that Kwame had rescued 2 street children in his absence and brought them to the palace. The physician took the girl away, but the next day, the same thing happened. It was nighttime, and Adibayo was in the throne room talking to some of his men when the little girl wandered in, half asleep. She walked past everyone and went straight to Adibayo, hugging his legs and calling him Papa again. Everyone was puzzled. Adibayo felt uncomfortable, but the little girl's affection was so unreserved, so genuine, that it was impossible for him to push her away. This time, he gently picked her up, his heart aching at the sight of her vulnerability, and carried her back to the physician's quarters. As he tucked the little girl back into bed, Adebayo's heart melted. Her tiny hand clutched his finger, her sleepy eyes looking up at him with trust. He smoothed her hair with a tenderness he hadn't known he possessed. On his way back to the throne room, the sound of carriages approaching made Adebayo's heart leap. He forgot to act cool like the king he was and rushed to the courtyard, the thought of seeing Kwame again exciting him to no end. As soon as the carriage doors opened, he yanked Kwame out with exuberance, catching him off guard. He enveloped him in a fierce hug, pressing kisses all over Kwame's face. Kwame's laughter rang out, a joyful sound that filled Adibayo with overwhelming relief and happiness. "You missed me that much, huh?" Kwame teased, his eyes sparkling with delight. Adebayo's expression softened, though his tone remained playful but stern. "I am very angry with you, Kwame. You didn't keep your promise," he said, though his eyes betrayed the depth of his affection. "But I missed you too much. I'll punish you later, but for now, I have other plans." With a mischievous grin, Adibayo picked Kwame up like he weighed no more than a feather and tossed him gently over his shoulder, carrying him towards their private quarters. Kwame protested, laughing and trying to wriggle free, but Adebayo was unyielding. Their playful banter continued until they reached their destination. W watched them from a distance with a mix of amusement and exasperation. He shook his head, muttering, "People in love are so annoying," before heading to the physician's quarters to check on his sister. Happened in Ghana. Kwame expressed his pride in Adebayo's courage and resilience, while Adibayo, his heart full, reflected on how much Kwame's support with King Kofi meant to him. He hadn't expected Kwame to go that far for him, and his heart swelled with love for it. They spoke of the challenges ahead, of how they would face them together, and their words were laced with hope. Since the beginning of their journey, this was the first time they truly felt hopeful. Something had gone their way for once. Well, almost. But there was hope. They knew that the other kings would think twice before crossing them again, and they hoped this sent a message to anyone thinking of coming for them. As their conversation wound down, Adibayo was reminded of something. "Why is there a little girl in our house calling me Papa, Kwame?" he asked, his voice a mix of amusement and confusion. Kwame's eyes softened with a look of longing. "Oh, you met A. Isn't she cute? Shoot, I forgot to introduce you to her brother. His name is W, and he's not as cute as his sister, but once you get to know him, he's all right." Adibayo chuckled softly, but his tone grew more serious as he asked, "I think it's great that you helped them, but when are we going to return them or place them in proper care?" Kwame sat up on his elbows and looked at Adibayo. "I've always wanted someone to call me Papa, to look up to me and depend on me. I want to be there for someone in that way." Adebayo's heart skipped a beat, sensing the depth of Kwame's desire. He quickly said, hoping to curb the look of longing in Kwame's eyes, to stop whatever thoughts he was entertaining in his head. "We are not adopting any children right now, Kwame. Our relationship is still new, and we need to focus on ourselves. You don't even know their real names." Kwame pouted, and Adibayo sighed in frustration. Kwame's pout was the most dangerous weapon in the world, capable of making Adibayo do anything. He pleaded with Kwame to stop, but Kwame kept at it, leaning close until there was no space between them. Adibayo let out a frustrated sigh. He knew he had lost the battle already. It showed in Kwame's eyes that he had already made up his mind. "Baby, please. I really like them. I thought you said anything I wanted, I could have," Kwame continued, pouting and pleading. Adibayo rubbed his hand over his eyes in frustration. As much as he tried to hold firm, Adibayo knew that, for the man he loved, he would eventually have to consider the possibility of expanding their family. And to be honest, if they did end up adopting W&A, it wouldn't just be something Kwame wanted alone. Adibayo had always wanted children too. He just hadn't thought it would happen this soon. He sighed, pulling Kwame close and resting his forehead against his. "All right, we'll think about it," he murmured, his voice softening. "But let's take it slow, okay? We'll figure this out together." Kwame's eyes lit up with a mix of gratitude and joy, and he kissed Adibayo tenderly, whispering against his lips, "Thank you. I love you so much." "I love you too," Adibayo replied, his heart swelling with a warmth that made everything else fade away. In that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together with love guiding their every step.